No Gmail, no YouTube, no search. Meta? Gone. Amazon? Broken into pieces. It seems impossible, but this idea is closer than you think. Behind the scenes of the American Congress, a silent movement is growing, dismantling the world's biggest tech companies, not due to bankruptcy, but because of excessive power. Because when three companies control what you see, what you buy, and what you think, that's no longer capitalism. It's monopoly. But what would happen if they were actually broken up? Chaos would be immediate. Millions of websites would stop working. Entire companies would disappear overnight. But at the same time, a new ecosystem could be born, more decentralized, more competitive, perhaps even more fair. In this video, we'll map out a hypothetical plan, but strategically plausible, of what the world would look like without the big techs. And more, who would win, who would lose, and why perhaps this collapse is exactly what Silicon Valley needs.
It all starts with a court decision, a historic antitrust case modeled on what happened with AT&T in 1982, but now with much more at stake. Imagine this. The U.S. Department of Justice, pressured by a bipartisan coalition in Congress, accuses Google, Meta, and Amazon of systematic anti-competitive practices. The accusation? Eliminating competitors before they grow, manipulating algorithms to favor their own products, and using data from billions of users as a weapon for market domination. The court decides the companies must be divided. Google is forced to separate YouTube, Android, and Google Ads into independent companies. Meta loses control of Instagram and WhatsApp. Amazon is divided into three: Marketplace, AWS, the cloud, and logistics. But this is not a simple restructuring. It's a high-risk geopolitical surgery. Because these companies are not just corporations, they are global infrastructure. Separating them is like trying to disassemble an airplane in mid-flight with passengers on board. And the most interesting part? The founders and CEOs themselves already foresaw this moment. Jeff Bezos, for example, created AWS as an almost autonomous company from the start. Mark Zuckerberg always resisted full integration between Meta's apps until he realized that could be used as an argument against a future breakup. In other words, they knew the end could come, and they prepared to survive it. But what happens the day after the breakup? Who takes control of these new companies? And, most importantly, what changes in your life?
In the first 24 hours after the breakup, the digital world enters a state of shock. Users try to access YouTube and receive a message, "Service temporarily unavailable." Companies that depend on Google Ads see their campaigns stop. Services that run on Amazon's cloud, like Netflix, Spotify, and even digital banks, face instability. It's as if the internet had suffered an earthquake. But the chaos doesn't last forever. Within a week, the new companies begin operating independently. YouTube Inc. now has its own CEO, board, and servers. Instagram, separated from Meta, begins testing a new algorithm, more transparent, less addicted to toxic retention. AWS, free from Amazon, starts offering services to competitors that were previously avoided out of fear of corporate espionage. And something unexpected happens. Innovation blooms again. Startups that were once crushed by predatory acquisitions now have room to grow. Smaller companies can compete for ads, data, and users. The digital ecosystem begins to look more like what it was in the 2000s. Chaotic, yes, but full of possibilities. Of course, it's not all roses. Fragmentation creates confusion. Users need to create new accounts, migrate data, relearn interfaces. Some services never function the same way again. And investors, they panic. Stock prices plummet.
Wall Street bleeds. But for many experts, this is the price of digital freedom. And there's a group watching all of this with heightened attention, European and Asian governments. Because if the U.S. managed to break up its big techs, who will be next? The breakup of big techs in the United States sends shockwaves across the planet. In Europe, politicians who have spent years pushing for greater digital regulation see the perfect opportunity. The European Union proposes its own version of strategic division for companies like Apple and TikTok. In China, the government celebrates in silence. The fragmentation of Silicon Valley weakens American hegemony in global technology. But the geopolitical game is just beginning. With Google, Meta, and Amazon divided, power vacuums emerge. Who will dominate the search market now? Who will be the new king of digital advertising? Who will control the data of the next generation? It's in this scenario that companies like DuckDuckGo, Shopify, Signal, and even decentralized blockchain projects begin to gain traction. What was once niche now becomes a real alternative. And countries reposition themselves too. India accelerates its plan to create a 100% national digital ecosystem. Russia strengthens its RUNET, the internet isolated from the West. And Switzerland, it becomes the world's new data haven, with even stricter privacy laws and underground servers protected by mountains. Meanwhile, in the U.S., a new debate begins. Was it worth it? The internet is more open, yes, but also more fragmented, slower, harder to navigate. The absence of a digital big brother brought freedom, but also uncertainty. And in the midst of this new world, one question remains. Did the big techs really die, or just change form?
The breakup was official. The brands were separated, but that doesn't mean the empire ended. Because the big techs, even fragmented, still have what matters most: data, talent, and capital. And that's where the counterattack begins. Google, now divided into several companies, creates an informal consortium. YouTube, Android, and Google Cloud begin collaborating with each other through commercial contracts, technically legal, but strategically coordinated. They share anonymized data, APIs, and even engineering teams. Meta does the same. Even without direct control over Instagram and WhatsApp, Zuckerberg maintains influence through former employees, board seats, and cross-investments. In practice, the separation exists on paper, but the ecosystem remains interconnected. And Amazon transforms its division into an advantage. AWS now serves competitors of Amazon Retail, earning billions from companies that once saw it as an enemy. Amazon's logistics, now independent, begins operating as a digital FedEx, delivering to any store, including Walmart. In other words, the big techs don't die, they adapt. They become harder to fight because now they're decentralized, less visible, more resilient. And there's an even more strategic detail. The forced breakup generates public sympathy. For years, these companies were seen as villains, but now, with their brands separated, they look like startups again. More human, more for good. And that's a valuable asset in a world where narrative is worth as much as the product. In the end, what looked like the end of the game may have been just the beginning of a new phase, even more profitable, even harder to regulate. If you work in technology, marketing, media, or simply live online, you need to be prepared for this scenario. Because if the big techs are broken up, the impact will be as profound as a global financial crisis. But unlike a banking collapse, this collapse will be invisible, silent, and it will hit first those who depend most on digital infrastructure. So here's a strategic plan for the day after. 1. Diversify now.
If your company depends exclusively on Google Ads, Amazon Web Services, or Instagram traffic, you're vulnerable. Start exploring alternatives: independent search engines, decentralized networks, smaller cloud providers. Don't wait for the system to crash to find a plan B. 2. Protect your data. With fragmentation, the risk of breaches and security failures increases. Keep local backups, use encryption, and, if possible, host your data on servers under your jurisdiction. 3. Prepare your team. The change will be technical, but also cultural. Marketing teams will have to relearn how to advertise. Developers will have to adapt APIs, and leaders will need to make quick decisions in an unstable environment. 4. Be ready for opportunities. Every crisis opens space for new players. If you have an idea for a digital product, service, or platform, this could be the right moment to launch. With the giants weakened, competition becomes fairer. 5. Monitor political movements. This won't be just a technological change, but also a regulatory one. Stay alert to decisions from Congress, the FTC, the European Union. The next move could come from where you least expect it. And finally, remember, the Internet was born decentralized. It was centralized by big techs, and now it may be about to free itself again. The question is not if this will happen, it's when, and who will be ready for the new game.